Hi guys, it's Misty. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm back to share my design team project with you for this week's Simon Says Stamp Wednesday challenge. Our challenge is thinking of you, and we are showcasing products from our very own Simon Says Stamp. So I did this video with 3 different cards in it because they were all very easy to make. They all took me about 15 minutes to make, and I've been in situations where I needed a card in a pinch and I didn't have it. Yes, I know. Surprisingly, I have tons of cards, but for some reason, I never have the card that I need for a particular event. So these are very easy to make. You could throw any sentiment on them, and they took 15 minutes, about 15 minutes to make. So the first one, very simple. I'm starting out on some fog cardstock, and I already trimmed it down using one of the Hero Arts nesting rounded rectangle dies, and I'm stamping it. The stamp I'm using is by My Favorite Things. It's the marble background, and I'm using fog ink as well. I had 2 different inks there because I wasn't sure if the fog was going to be too light, but it was perfect because I wanted it nice and light. So I went ahead and I only stamped that one once. I just because I didn't want it to get any darker. And this is one of those times that it's handy to have more than one Misty. So instead of taking out that background stamp, I'm just going to use my mini Misty for this. And I'm going to use this floral ring. It's not a wreath. Wreaths are perfectly round, I think. Well, all the wreaths I've seen are round, so we'll call it a floral ring. I don't know, but what's great about the stamp set is this floral ring here. The 2 larger sentiments fit inside of it, so all you have to do is reposition it to fit the other sentiment, which I'll show you in the next card. So I went ahead and prepped my cardstock with some anti-static powder, and this one I am going to stamp out twice. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss any areas. And then I'm going to pour some white embossing powder on it. Now see, I kind of checked the background a little bit. I probably should have checked it before I put on the embossing powder, because if the ink was wet, I would have had a huge mess on my hands, but thankfully it's dye-based ink and it dries pretty quick, so I didn't have an embossing nightmare on my hands. Now, if I had used distress inks, then it probably would have still been wet and I would have had embossing powder everywhere. So it's always best to check your cardstock just by pouring a little bit of embossing powder on it to make sure that the background is dry before you pour it on the whole thing. Hope that made sense. All right, so now the sentiment I'm using for this one is from the same stamp set, the Healing Hug stamp set by Simon Says Stamp. And I'm just going to position it here. And see how it dips in the lower right hand corner? It kind of wraps around the sentiment. Then there's another large sentiment that says Get Well Soon, and it fits perfectly around that one too. You just reposition that floral ring there, and which I'll show you here in a second, but I just really like this stamp set. I think it's cool. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp the sentiment out twice as well. I'm using a pretty light background, and I just didn't want it to get lost in the background. So I'm going to stamp it out twice, make sure I get the entire sentiment covered in embossing powder, and then I'll heat set that too. I'm going to go ahead and put it in a book that I just happen to have sitting next to my desk to flatten it out a bit. And then I found this beautiful cardstock in my my stash pile, so I have no idea where it's from, but it reminds me of the Bazzill Mint Julep cardstock. It's a really, really pretty color. So I'm going to use that for a couple of these cards. Now, I only have 3 cards in this video, but I ended up making 6 cards for this challenge. 3 of them I did the same, and then 3 of them, okay, well, anyway. Yes, I made 6 cards for this challenge, but there's only 3 different designs. So I'm going to use my handy sentiment label die by Simon Says Stamp to cut it out. I don't know why I always hem and haw on how long to make it. I mean, I already know I'm going to trim it down. It's like I just can't commit to it though, so I have to make it to make it longer. And then I'll cut it down the first chance I get. Weird, I know. Maybe I have commitment issues. Well, I have been married for 10 years, so maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, I always cut it way too big, just in case. You never know. So I already trimmed that down. I'm using my Gina K Connect glue, and I'm just going to put that down in the corner. I really didn't want to cover any of the floral ring, but I wanted to add some color to the front of this. So what I liked about this cardstock is this beautiful Nuvo drops. What color is this? This is Aquatic Mist. This color matched perfectly to that cardstock. So I'm just going to kind of add some random drops here and there. And that is my first card. Now, I didn't use a stopwatch until I got smart in the last card. I actually timed it on my phone, but this card as well, I'm just kind of eyeing the clock, seeing how long it takes me. So this is my next card. I'm using a cardstock that I love. This is by Sunny Studio, and it's Heroic Halftones. And it's got like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and black. And it just has these cool like polka dot patterns on them. And they're just cards that you would use like if you're making a superhero card or something. But I thought it was perfect for this card. So I'm going to take advantage of the center of this. Now see the floral ring this time, I rotated it so that dip is in the top right hand corner now. And you'll see when I put the sentiment on why it's like that. So that's all I did. I just rotated it. I'm doing the same thing. I hit it with, or I wiped anti-static powder on it, and I stamped them out twice with embossing ink, both the floral ring and the sentiment. And then heat set the white embossing powder. And I'm using these circle dies by Simon Says Stamp. Nested circle dies is what they are. And I'm using the two largest ones, and then I'm using the largest one for the card base. And I'm going to do some partial die cutting here for the card base. I'm going to hang a portion of that circle off my die cutting plate on both of them, and then I'm just going to use scissors to bring the two circles together. I'm sure there's an easier way to bring those together beautifully, but I just don't know it. So that's how I did it. It worked. So it worked on both cards actually. So I was happy with it. I'm just going to use my bone folder here to fold it in half, and then I'll take my scissors to fine tune it a bit. Then see, fits perfectly behind the circle. I'm using Chip Sapphire Distress ink to go around the edges, and whoops. Yes, I did make this card twice. I said it worked on both times because the first time I made it, I didn't go around the edges with the Chip Sapphire, and I didn't think about it until it was all put together. And it's little things like that that kind of drive me crazy. So I was trying to think of a way that I could mask off the yellow circle, because once I put it together, the yellow circle is the outer edge, and obviously I can't go over that. So I was thinking maybe some masking paper to cover up the yellow circle part, but it was just easier to make a new card because I really wanted that Chip Sapphire around the edge, and I think it was worth it. It looks beautiful. And then I'm just taking my cloth here and I'm wiping all that ink off of the embossing powder, brighten it up a bit. I mean, it doesn't make that big of a difference, but whatever. It was important to me, so I made it again, and now I have 2 Get Well Soon cards, just in case. Now for the sentiment here, the second part of the sentiment, it was in 2 lines, and I didn't want it to be in 2 lines, so, well, unfortunately, I wasn't in the screenshot here, but I'll just tell you what I'm doing. So I'm just taking washi tape, and I'm going to cover up the second line. I'm going to ink it up, take the washi tape off, very important, stamp it, and then do the same thing. I'll mask off the top line and stamp the second one and make it in one straight line. One time I forgot to take off the washi tape. That's a mistake you only make once. Probably not. I'll probably do it again someday, but I'd like to think I learned from my mistakes. So this time I did want the sentiment to be nice and long because I wanted it to go across the whole front of my card. So I'm going to make sure I have plenty of room on both sides. And I'll cut that out with one of the smaller sentiment label dies by Simon Says Stamp. And then I'm going to glue it on the front of my card first before trimming it down so I can center it. And then I just have to put it all together. Oh yeah, so I didn't do a video last week because we had no power for 5 days and there was absolutely nothing going on in this town. There was no bad weather, there was no fires. Well, fires were like an hour and a half away, but why they turned off our power and internet, I still don't understand, but I'm hearing PG&E is going to be doing that more often than I would like. And I know I'm probably being a little dramatic about this, but 5 days with no power and no internet almost drove me crazy. I told my husband we need to prepare a little bit better if this is going to happen often because all of our board games are old. Nobody wants to play Chutes and Ladders anymore or Candyland. Luckily we had Sorry, but we need to get some more updated, newer, fun board games. Maybe some new books in the house. Just some things to do when the power goes out. But yeah, and then it happened right before Halloween. So we got power the day before Halloween. And Halloween is crazy on our street. We get hit so hard. We passed out candy to 1,651 kids this year. And that's the most we've ever done. But anyway, so the community donates candy. And so I had to go pick up all the candy. And then I have to go door to door and pass it out to everyone on our street, which is super helpful because, I mean, you know, we spend a couple $100s on candy and it's nice to have the community chip in for that, especially for, you know, people who can't afford that much or don't want to spend that much or, you know, the older folks and stuff like that that live on our street. So, but anyway, this is all less than 24 hours before Halloween, so I was going a little bit crazy. Okay. Sorry, that was my second card. All I did was put everything together. I added some steel blue Nuvo drops, which is a beautiful color. I love that color. And then this is my third card. Did you catch that I started my timer on this one? Yeah, I finally got smart on the third card and decided to time myself on my phone. And I made this card 3 times. That's how I have 6 cards. I made the circle one twice and I made this one 3 times. But the easiest stamp set, I think, to make a super fast card is the Wildflowers stamp set by Simon Says Stamp. All you got to do is throw on some ink like I'm doing here and stamp out the wildflower stamp and you basically have a card. I'm using spiced marmalade, picked raspberry, and seedless preserves. These are just distress inks, not distress oxide inks. And then I'm sprinkling on some water. And I wish I would have, on one of them at least, tried put some of the Distress Resist spray on it because that gives such a cool effect. But again, I didn't think of it until after I was already done with all 3, but maybe next time. Do you guys ever do that? Do you think of things that you should have done after the fact? I do that way too often. But then it drives me crazy until I actually make the card and do whatever it is that I wish I would have done on it the first time. Like with the chipped sapphire ink on the last card. But anyway, I'm loving these 3 colors together. I don't think I've ever used these 3 colors together, but they go really well together. I'm using the Creative Corner, the Misty Creative Corner, the L-shaped ruler to put along the side there. And I'm using a tool. I was trying to hold the paper down because I didn't want it to move, which was kind of silly because I'm using that L-shaped ruler. So I'm not really sure why I did that, but I'm always second guessing myself. So you see me checking there to see if it's going to line up. And as long as with that L-shaped ruler, it's going to line up. I mean, as long as you butt your paper up to it, then I just have to trust the process a little bit more sometimes. Yeah. So I stamped that out 3 times, and you could probably get away with 2 times. I'm using the Versa Fine ink. I always get Versa Mark and Versa Fine mixed up, but Versa Fine ink. And I stamped it. I don't know. I just stamped it 3 times just to make sure it's a nice solid image. And with the VersaFine, it's perfect ink if you want to put like clear embossing powder over the top of it. which I didn't want to for the flowers because I like the flowers. I wanted them to be matte, but I am going to do that for the sentiment here. So I'm going to stamp this out 3 times as well. Again, I didn't notice much of a difference between the second and the third time, so you could probably get away with just twice. And then I'm going to go ahead and put some clear embossing powder over it. Should have checked my paper hair, because if I would have noticed that that black ink was not dry. But luckily with this little spoon, I didn't get it too much on the black flowers, so it was really easy to just wipe away. But I did use my anti-static powder first, which wouldn't have helped me if the ink was wet, but still important to use. So this way the thinking of you will be shiny and the rest of it will be a flat matte color. And again, I'm just going to use my cloth to wipe away that anti-static powder. The thinking of you sentiment is from the Say It All Friend stamp set by Simon Says Stamp. And another one of my favorite thinking of you stamps is on the Sketched Flowers stamp set, also by Simon Says Stamp. I used that for the other 2 cards that I made like this. And I'm going to use my Gina K Connect glue to glue it all together. And I'm running out of my favorite glue. And I'm so mad at myself because I just placed an order and I totally forgot to order more of that. Next time. I'm going to add this to a top folding black card base. And I never show the inside of my cards for some reason. But when I do a black card base, I like to pick a color from the front of the card and put it on the inside. So like I'll either put a peachy color cardstock or a light pink or a light purple. But a lot of the times when I do ink blended backgrounds like this, I'll just do another ink blended panel, but just make the colors much lighter. Then that way you can still see your message on the inside. Okay, so it took me almost 16 minutes, but it is still in the 15-minute range. So I had a lot of fun with this challenge this week. Yeah, all 3 of these cards took me about 15 minutes to make, and that's perfect when you, are in a pinch and you need a card right away. And I didn't have any get well cards, so this was a perfect challenge for me. Now I have 6 of them. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I always appreciate it. All the supplies that I used will be listed and linked in the video description below and over on my blog as well, with additional pictures and links to the Simon Says Stamp Wednesday challenge blog in case you'd like to join us for this challenge this week. And let me know what you thought of this video. Either click on the thumbs up or the thumbs down, and I'll see you guys next week with a new video. Thanks for watching. Bye.